Hey everyone, and welcome to Beauty from the Shelf, a podcast where industry experts fill in the gaps that are integral to growth for early stage beauty founders and brands. Today's episode includes a deep dive into a critical pillar of business, marketing. There are a whole entire podcast dedicated to marketing, and I am so excited to take a piece of this business function and to do a deep dive. And I'm joined today by friend Robin Laueffer of Little Big Brands.
For fun, I kind of typed in anti-aging cream into Google, and I had 255 million hits in less than a second.
Now let me tell you a little bit more about Robin. She is a fellow lover of beauty. And let me tell you, Robin and I can get together and chat for a while because we like a lot of the same things. Robin is the director of brand and research at Little Big Brands, or LBB as they are also known. LBB is a boutique branding agency out of New York. They work with a variety of CPGs, from scrappy startups to big household names. And they do everything related to how a brand shows up both to the retailer and consumer. That can include packaging, design, brand voice, brand feel, all of the things. So excited to have Robin join us today, and I think you all are going to love the conversation. Let's get into it. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today to talk about marketing, because it's something that's near and dear to my heart, as I found out that I love the marketing side of business. And I know that that is something that you have a lot of passion for as well. Yeah. And I think that in this day of a new brand popping up every day, and, you know, we think back to the early 2000s and the ease that there was in kind of acquiring new customers and just, you know, getting them with a new model of doing business. It almost made businesses question, like, is there a point in marketing and branding? And so I think that the fact that I'm asking it, there's probably already a bias as to what my answer is. But I'd love to hear from you on why marketing is important to businesses and especially to, you know, early stage beauty brands.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you kind of just said it yourself. Like, so much has changed in the last couple of years, and there are so many brands to choose from. I feel like, you know, this is kind of been saying this for years and years and years. And then in the pandemic, it felt like so many people were like, hey, I have an idea. I'm going to launch a new brand. So we have even more brands, and it can be really, really overwhelming. You know, saying for fun, I kind of typed in anti-aging cream into Google, and I had 255 million hits in less than a second. You know, that is like unbelievable. There is so much choice. In fact, you know, it's almost like they call the paradox of choice. I mean, have you heard about the jam study? It was this amazing study for jam. Okay, so there was a study done a couple of years ago. And what they found is if you give shoppers a choice of 24 different jams, 3% of shoppers will buy jams. But when you give them a choice of just 6 different jams, 30% will buy jam. So that's 3% versus 30%. So, you know, while choice is good, too much choice can be overwhelming. And actually, it's almost to the detriment of the entire industry, because people are just walking away and saying, like, this is just, I don't have time for this. So where does marketing come in? You know, marketing is about setting out your stall. This is who we are. This is what we stand for. We can't wait to be found. Again, if I had to go through 255 million hits, I'm never going to find you unless you've got a lot of money and you're spending lots of money to be in the top, you know, 1, 2, 3 choices. So I need something that's going to talk to me, something that's going to grab me. I need to know, yes, why your product is different. That's a big challenge because there's so much product parity out there that it often comes down to, what does your brand stand for? What do you as a founder believe in? And how does that manifest itself in the products and brands that you're putting out there? We know that particularly Gen Z and millennials are a very value driven consumer, and they will buy into brands that share their values, not just social values, but, just overall, like, what is your belief? What is driving you? Why did you do that? And particularly young brands where the founders are very much a part of it. Who are you? Why did you do this? What was the inspiration behind it? Because people will be able to relate to you. So marketing becomes a really important way to, I don't know, help people cut through the clutter, to help them find you so that then they can experience you. And then, it's not enough. You have to continue to build the relationship, but to at least be seen. Just expecting to like put your product out there, whether it's online or it's on the supermarket shelves, it's going to be very, very challenging. People just don't have time to do this.
Thanks, Robin. That's really helpful. And I think that's a great explanation as to why marketing is important. Totally agree with you in everything that you said. In part of your answer, you talked a little bit about the founder. And I'm curious, for some brands, the founder is a very big part of their marketing and of the brand and who they are. Do you think this is an essential part of building a brand these days? Like, how important is the founder? Do they have to be, part of the marketing? Is it a nice to have? Like, how does that come into play?
It's one lever that you can pull, if you will. It's about authenticity, right? And so that's really the key, the authenticity. We are getting tired, as a group of people, as a consumer group, we're getting tired of big and impersonal and faceless corporations, right? We feel like we can't connect with them. We feel like, they're only worried about making money. We don't know anything about them. We live in a world where our natural tendency is to distrust versus trust. So Edelman does a trust barometer study every year. And this year they found that the default for something like 60% of people is they will naturally distrust before they trust. So the important thing is building trust. How you build trust, much of it is coming from feeling like you're an authentic brand. An authentic brand is being able to understand what that brand stands for, where it comes from. So in some cases, the founder is a very good way of building that authenticity, right? I believe if you tell me you're the founder and you tell me a story about yourself or, personal belief or, a condition that you were dealing with, I know you, I can relate to you. You're a person. You're not a faceless corporation. It doesn't have to be that. Sometimes it's about, the history or heritage of an ingredient. There's a romance behind it. Think about La Mer and the miracle broth and the story of the miracle broth and, playing music to it. I mean, it is unbelievable. But there's so much romance in it. And it comes from something that really happened. So that's building authenticity through the sort of heritage of an ingredient. You can also build it through, sometimes provenance. Where did it come from? Is it, coming from a particular place, from a particular flower, a particular plant? It's something that gives it grounding. So it doesn't feel, some ways, manufactured, right? Manufactured becomes almost a bad word, a dirty word, because we want something that's real. And with the founder, and the way I think you're seeing so many founder stories come out, is that you can easily see a link between their personal story and their beliefs and what their product is designed to deliver. When that link happens, people will believe that there's an authenticity to it. If it doesn't happen, if you talk, I believe in this and I have a product that does that and they're disconnected, then that founder story is not really a lever that you should think about pulling. There's maybe something else to build that level of authenticity.
That's so good. And I think such a great explanation, because even I talk to founders sometimes who are like, I have to get out in front of here even more. I don't necessarily want to be a celebrity, but it's good, I think, to know that that's not necessarily the only way or the only lever that you can use. It almost sounds like you were talking about that as a way to stand out. And so I'm wondering, given, 250 million searches, I think you said, for anti-aging cream, and
Yes.
how important marketing is. What else can brands do to stand out from everyone else online? You talked about the founder story, but are there other things that they can do to stand
Yeah.
out?
So I am an enormous fan of relationships and communities, right? Because one of the important things is once you put your brand out there, it's kind of not really your brand anymore. The brand starts to become sort of becomes owned by the consumers who are using it, right? They take it on, they define its meaning, they have a lot of content around it. They are bringing themselves to it. So if you're establishing relationships and communities, you can kind of deepen that relationship. I just read, I thought, a really profound stat the other day. And it was that communities generate more authentic interactions and advice, and user generated content is now 10 times more influential in the purchase decision than influencer or branded content, right? That is really an incredible number, 10 times more. And you think about all these people who are like paying all these influencers to go out there, where if you're engaging a community and they're developing content for you, that has 10 times more purchasing power than anything you're paying, for an influencer, a celebrity, even a micro influencer to kind of tout your brand. A lot of really great examples of that. One of the brands we work on, I think I was telling you about this before, it's Greater Than. It's not in the beauty space, but it started off as a clean, healthy hydration drink for athletes, right? So you go to your CrossFit gym, afterwards you have this, it's a great hydration drink. And there are a gazillion brands out there, like literally with enormous marketing budgets, right? So, they were like a teeny, teeny, teeny little minnow in, all the oceans of the world put together. So they kind of went out and started to see if they can connect with different communities. And where they really truly connected was with the community of lactating moms who found that the product actually helped them produce more milk. I mean, it makes sense. A well hydrated body works better, right? So this was completely not how they defined their brand. Remember, I said the brand belongs to your consumers, but the consumers really redefined the brand as being like this essential tool for new moms. And so they really leaned into this. They created a Facebook community called Greater Moms. They work with the moms. They do a lot of co-creation. They test all new products with them. They even have a program called the Mominator, where they'll help moms build their own social profile so they can actually start making money on their own and almost become influencers. So it's giving moms, this support and this platform. It even hired full time some of the people from their community. We've just worked with them. We've redesigned the whole packaging. It's no longer got sports things on it. You no longer see like mountain climbers on it, but it's beautifully done and it's healthy hydration for mom and family. So that's a great example of building that community, listening to your consumer and kind of co-creating the brand with them.
That's such a great story and such a good reminder that that consumer really does have a lot of power, and that in some cases that can be, what kind of catapults you to getting more sales, getting more visibility, all of those things. So that's really a great story.
Yeah, and think about like new product development because you've got your people right there in your community, right? So you
Yeah, you
just
do.
go out and ask them, what do you need? What needs aren't being met? How can we help you more? They're great. There's lots of great examples of it. Volition has their lab where people can, upload their ideas and people can vote on them. So, we've seen that happening a lot, but to be really a part of that community, people will actually go to your space to talk about their life, not just the transaction, not just, a hydration drink or, any new product, but actually talk about their feelings and their concerns and their hopes and dreams. That's how you build a relationship that is going to help you stand apart. And, lots of new brands coming in. So how do you make sure that you don't take that relationship for granted? Being in that community with them, fostering communities amongst your users is fantastic as well.
That's really good. That's really good. I also love that kind of piece about community. And just speaking of new brands, I know you just talked about a brand that was in the hydration space, but shifting back to beauty and thinking about the role of new beauty brands, just curious, do you think that those brands are creating a bigger pie? I know, like, for a time, one of the things that brands could kind of share to retailers as they were pitching is that, hey, like, I'm bringing in new consumers. Maybe these consumers are at home making their own products, right? Because the products aren't natural, for example. And so, the retailers of the world were able to grow a bigger share, right? Bigger pie.
Mhm.
Do you think that they are chipping away at current share for brands that are there? Or do you think that they actually are creating a bigger pie for everyone to kind of have a piece of?
Monique, that is such an incredible question. It's a really, really good question. And I know that is certainly on the mind of retailers. I was literally just speaking to a client this morning, who's going into Target and, has to talk about like how they're bringing in new people. And like, there's so many options, like who's out there? And so it is a really, really good question. I'm going to try to think if I can have a good answer for you. I think some of the things I'm seeing is like different audiences, right? So one of the things that, given my age, I've been very happy to see is the emergence of, menopause beauty in the beauty space. Like someone woke up and said, oh my God, women exist after the age of 45.
Wow, women go through this life stage called menopause. Who knew?
Who knew? I mean, I don't want to put down the legacy brands in the menopause space. I'm not going to say anything bad about them. But I did go and they're like sandwiched in between like yeast infections and something else, right? I don't want to go there. That's not how I see myself. And then you have a brand like Womanness, and Womanness is speaking about possibilities and beauty and, but in a realistic way. Like you have less collagen. So we have products that are different. Like I don't want a product that Gen Z is using. I want a product that is geared towards my skin type and my issues. So I do think there's an opportunity of finding consumers. You also see that with the emergence of all of the new brands that are for people of color, people who have been ignored for a very, very long time, who don't have the same skin, who don't have the same hair. And now you have products coming out. And so I think there's opportunities to find audiences that have not been met before, their needs have not been met before. But there's 255 million brands out there. So, it's kind of going to be a little bit of stealing share and maybe a little bit of organic growth. I think it'd be wonderful if there was tremendous amount of organic growth. There's always new things coming out. That's the other thing, like technology. I'm going to try to remember the statistic. Between the years of like 1900 and 1950, all of human knowledge doubled every 20 years. And I'm now definitely making it up. But today, all of human knowledge, I think, doubles every 12 hours. It's something crazy like that. It is literally something crazy like that. I can try to find the actual stat, right? Because it's mind blowing how much we have learned. And it's the same thing, within packaged goods, same thing within beauty, with technology, with science. We are always discovering new things, right? So we're discovering new ingredients. We're discovering new modes of application, modes of working. New clinical studies are being done. We're learning new things. So I think there is still like organic growth as we continue to learn and evolve. New categories can be opened up that never existed. I mean, think about like teeth whitening. 20 years ago, you might have had a whitening toothpaste, right? Now there's so much technology. We figured out you can just like paint it on and you don't have to wear the trays. Or, there's like light reflecting gels that you put on that can make your teeth look whiter. There's the LED that you can do at home. So, here was something that only a very few people could afford to go to the dentist and spend that money. But technology has now created an entire market. And that's why it's one of the biggest growing categories in the beauty space, not necessarily in the oral care space, because it's kind of opened up and that technology made it possible.
That's so good, Robin. And just thinking about that, that technology and that, I mean, to your point, right? We have access to knowledge that was just really hard to get access to, right? Before. And so that almost made the brands the experts and the only folks that we could go to in the past. You think 50 years ago, I was believing everything, or not me, because I wasn't around 50 years ago, but my mom. My mom was
Right,
certainly believing everything,
right,
that she saw on the commercials 50 years ago. And she couldn't fact check things or do anything like that.
right.
And now with that ability, it means that brands, that gives them more opportunities in some cases. And I think it also can, pose as like a challenge again to like cut through the noise, as, we kind of talked a little bit about earlier.
Mhm.
That also makes me think, though, in saying that, how do brands go about creating brand loyalty? Because to that point, right? Like beforehand, it was like I told them something. They trust me because I gave them knowledge.
Right.
They trust me because I'm giving them something that they aren't able to have access to. That was almost the way I feel like that brands were able to gain loyalty when I think about big, CPG houses like a P&G, a
Right.
Unilever, with their research and their science, they were able to really create that loyalty by having, both science, technology, what that was, at the time, and generating loyalty with products that
Yeah.
worked well. How do brands go about creating that loyalty now? And do you think there's a point where you're like, I've achieved maximum brand loyalty, check, we're done? Like, is this work done? Or is it?
Okay. So before I speak about what your last thing was, I just want to say one of the things I'm seeing with like science and technology, and you said consumers have become so much more knowledgeable. And by the way, if we don't know it, we just ask Mr. Google. He's got the answers to absolutely everything we can ever know. So we've become very, very ingredient savvy. We've got sort of this cult of the hero ingredient. We're all looking for the latest things. So again, how do you stand out in that way? One of the things I'm seeing more and more, and it almost goes back to the old L'Oreal days when they would like create these like crazy names of things. It's like people are doing it again. They're starting to brand their technology. Right now that everyone has a hyaluronic acid, they are branding their special hyaluronic acid. Now that everybody is talking about the microbiome, we've got brands branding their version of their microbiome protective thing. So we're not just branding products, we're branding ingredients in products as well. That's a very big shift that I'd never seen before.
That's good.
So I think that's very interesting. So you asked about, do you ever get to a point where you go like, tick, we've reached maximum loyalty? And I always love to think about a consumer and a brand relationship as a love affair. And if I said to you, like in your love affair, are you ever just like, I'm done. I don't have to work on my relationship anymore. I would be like, no. I don't know. Happily ever after, maybe, but you have to work on it. It requires work. So, sorry, my thing keeps buzzing. So, if we think about that relationship and we think about it as a love affair, yeah, love at first sight is great. It's all exciting, it's sexy, it's fun, I'm using it. But, if I'm not keeping it alive, all of a sudden I'm licking, right? I'm at the shelf. I'm at like Ulta. I'm like, that looks sexy. I want to try that, right? So you have to constantly keep it going, right? I mean, it's a really good analogy. And you think in any like great love affair, don't take somebody for granted. Always show them that you appreciate them. Surprise and delight them, right? My husband came home with flowers the other day. All is forgiven. We weren't even having a fight. Fantastic. He gets extra points there. It's that kind of thing. Like, how do you surprise people? How do you delight them?
I love it.
Do you remember Method when Method first came out?
Yes.
Those emails, oh my God, they were phenomenal.
because no one else was doing that. And it was just
No,
like, oh my gosh, they make me so happy. Like the way that they're doing this, the colors, it's the.
everything, that email, and like everyone would talk about it. And ended up ordering the product just because I wanted that email. It was surprising. It was delightful. It was silly. It was over the top. It made you smile. This is a deodorant. And this deodorant actually added lightness and levity to my day. And I talked about it. Literally, I never spoke about deodorant before. And I was speaking about deodorant, right? And then they continue. So it wasn't just the, hey, we got your order. We're so excited. We're doing backflips, but we're packing it up. You're getting it soon. What did you think about it? It was this constant conversation. And every time they were surprising you, they were delighting you. It was interesting. It was fun. So I think that that's, again, if we think about it like a love affair, yes, it's important to have that love at first sight. I work in a design agency. So talk about packaging, talk about visual identity. I need something sexy, right? If I need to gather attention, there is a really important element to getting someone's attention, getting that sense of desire. But once I have you, I want to know more about you. So again, like in any relationship, where are you from? What are your parents like? Who are your friends and family? Where did you grow up? What did you believe in? What makes you happy, right? Let's see. Are we aligned with each other? How can we grow with each other? Then it's about, again, keeping it going, keeping it alive, introducing you to friends and family. So that's like new products that can come in, new uses that can come in. So literally, I think it's just such a great analogy to think about it that way. In fact, I keep using the word consumers, and I always yell at people, don't call them consumers, they're people, even though we do consume, right? So if you think of them as, these people that I am in a relationship with versus these consumers of my product, I think it just puts a very different lens on things, and it's an ongoing process. I don't think there's ever something you can check off because there's that sexy brand right next to it who's saying, hey, I like you too. Let's get together.
Right. I love that. And I love that analogy with brands being like a love affair. I think it's interesting you talking about kind of like method and their initial way to kind of hook you in by having these different touch points in which they're letting you know that the product is on its way. And it just made me think, that was new then. Now our expectation is that, hey, when you talk to me, just like, like you said with relationships, you probably expect, your partner to send you a text when they land somewhere, whereas that wasn't an expectation when cell phones didn't exist.
That's right.
But now there are, new expectations with consumers, whether that's promotions, whether that's with new products. And so it's really important for brands to keep this in mind so that they maintain the loyalty. That's what I heard you saying. But also knowing like expectations for consumers have changed. And that kind of makes it really competitive. That can be tough.
It is. It's very competitive because think about all those other brands. You asked me, is it all organic growth or are we stealing from each other? Think about all those brands who want to steal your consumers because they're already in the market.
Right.
So, you've got enemies at the gate.
That's right. No, that's good. So I'm going to go ahead and ask kind of like a devil's advocate question, if you will. Where do you see brands fail at marketing?
I think one of the biggest things is trying to be all things to all people. I have a real problem with that. Not to put in a plug for, LBB or any branding agency, but is really worthwhile having an outside perspective because, particularly founders, you fall in love with your brand and you should. It's great. It's your baby. You birthed it, like it was hard and you love it and you put your heart and soul into it. Right. And like nobody ever looks at their child and saying, well, maybe they're not all that cute. Right. You think it's perfect. And sometimes you need to have that outside objective to kind of look at it and say, okay, I see potential here, but here's where you are not living up, to what people are expecting, or you are talking cost of entry benefits. There's nothing unique about what you're saying, or you're saying too much, nothing is really breaking through. So it's always important to have that outside objective. So where do you fail? You don't get that outside objectives. Two, you try to be all things to all people. And three, kind of failure to sacrifice. And this is my lovely Picasso story, which I love. So this is a story about Picasso in his sculpting period. And the story goes that, he's in his studio and he's going to start sculpting, and a young apprentice comes in and he sees the great master with this big block of stone in front of him. And he says to him, "What are you sculpting?" And Picasso says, "I'm sculpting a lion." And the student looks at him and he says, "A lion? How are you going to get a lion from that big block of stone?" And Picasso says, "It's simple. I'm going to pick up my chisel and chip away anything that doesn't look like a lion." And I love that story because sacrifice is one of the hardest things, but it's probably one of the most important things people can do, particularly when you don't have giant budgets. You need to be really tight. Like, what is that one thing that you want to stand for, right? And then everything you do should reinforce that one thing. And what you need to stop doing is all the other stuff that's distracting from that one thing. So if you're always chasing the latest trend, you come out there and you're like, "We're all about efficacy, efficacy, efficacy." And then people going, "Clean is really important." You're like, "Yeah, but we're clean too." Okay. And of course you can be both, but know who you are and what you stand for and be really consistent with it, right? We talked before about the hammer analogy. When you are a giant brand with a giant marketing budget, you think about your marketing budget being a hammer. You have a giant hammer. You can have a pretty dull message because if you just hammer it enough, it's going to break through. If you're a young brand, you're an emerging brand, you have a very small little hammer. We don't have millions of dollars for marketing, right? It's like a teeny little hammer versus like L'Oreal's hammer. You need an extremely sharp nail so that you just really need to tap it and then that nail will go through. And those are like two kind of very different analogies, Picasso and a hammer and a nail, but they kind of go together, right? If you can have a very sharp understanding, a very sharp nail, so your message is very sharp, you don't need a lot of budget to put through, especially if you can chip away all those other distractions out there. Don't try to be all things to all people.
That's so good, Robin. You have so many good analogies. I think that the folks that are listening are going to have a lot of stickiness and ways to remember the things that you've shared. As I also just think about that and you talking about that hammer and that nail and wanting to make sure, talking about smaller marketing budgets, you're being very pointed, right? So that that message gets through.
Yeah.
What do you think is most important to the consumer when they are considering a brand? Hearing these messages, I know there's probably a multitude of things, but maybe you talk about what those things are that could be important and kind of just share, what might stand out to them.
Yeah. So, it's a really, really good question. And I think it's going to be different for every brand. I always say the most important thing in the heart of a strong brand is a great product. Unfortunately, a lot of products are parody products, and there's very, very little difference in that product. If you are launching a parody product with a tiny marketing budget, it's going to be really challenging. And so I think maybe in that case, it's probably maybe joining a community of people. Like, there's so many great communities on Reddit. Can you go on to Reddit? I think L'Oreal is not a small brand, but with their Thayer Natural Remedies, they did a Ask Me Anything session on Reddit, and they had like 450 questions. So that's a really interesting, very low budget way of just going where a community already exists and offering something of value to them. So I think that's, a potential way that you can do it. I think it's all about kind of thinking about things differently. The point I'm making is you have to offer the consumer something. Again, we've got so many choices out there and, less time and less attention. What are you offering me? Ideally, you're offering me a product with a real point of difference. That's great. If you are fulfilling an unmet need, right, it's getting that message out there. That's going to be really important. But if you can't do that, how else can you be valuable to me? Right? You can be valuable through advice that you give. You can be valuable to me with information. Think about the Inky List. Inky List did a great job. The Inky List in some ways was just like, hey, look at how well The Ordinary did. Now we're going to come out with the Inky List. And in some ways, if you look at them, they look very similar. I mean, I know the Inky List came from the UK, but in the US, they looked like a very similar, maybe slightly cheaper, The Ordinary. They went whole hog on education. They do an amazing job with their Inky School. They've got live tutorials. You can go in and talk to them. It's 24/7. So they really connected with consumers by giving them some really, really important information, an education program that became a really important part of their brand. You can just engage people. So for Greater Than, it gave these lactating moms a place to share ideas and talk about their challenges, right? And so that didn't really exist for them. So how do you bring value to people if your product isn't actually delivering anything differentiated?
That's really, really good. And I do think that, there's probably a decent number of brands who are kind of falling in that category of not necessarily having anything differentiated. And so I think because it is, a saturated market, or I would say not necessarily saturated, but a very populated market, it's important for them to have an idea of what are some of those things. And I think that that community, what you've talked about, is very, very helpful.
Yeah.
I think we've talked so much today about things that have been super helpful. And one question that I'm going to try my best to ask everyone who comes on the show is, keeping in mind that, we're talking to early stage brands that likely are strapped for cash. Are there any free or low cost resources, albeit a book or a website, that could be helpful to a founder or team member at an early stage brand that is catered towards this topic that we're discussing today? So in this case, marketing or branding.
For me, the best thing is consumer reviews about you or about your competition. You will learn more from that than any marketing textbook out there, because that's literally what people are feeling. It's free. So go and shop the shelves. That's one. That's free too. What are you seeing? What are you noticing? Plot everything out, stick them on a map, look at where things are falling out, and then see what people are saying. One of the things I do, this is super easy. I will go in for any brand I'm looking at. And if you go on Amazon or you go to Target.com or any, online retailer, and you click on the reviews, you can copy paste all the reviews for a particular brand. And I will literally copy paste them into a Word document, right? Then I will copy the entire Word document and put it into a free online word cloud generator. And that will tell you all the words that are coming out. So is it a key ingredient that everybody is talking about? Is it the size that people are talking about? What are the complaints that people have? It will literally make the phrases that are said most often much bigger and the other ones really, really small. So it's just a really, really simple way to see what people are saying. That is really going to be the best education out there. I think asking people, there's always those great stories like Curlsmith, created this community where they just ask people about it, Alley-oop and their Slack channel, ask people what they think. Marketing books are, I don't know. Not that I'm against marketing textbooks, but you want to know what's really, really happening, what people are really feeling. That's going to be your best bet. Go into a store and just talk to people. They might think you're weird, but I do it all the time. I'm like, oh, hey, that looks interesting. I am that crazy person you don't want next to you in a store. And I'm like, have you tried that before? Do you like it?
You know that you've been in retail when you go to a store and you look and you go, oh, I saw that you were looking at this product and then you moved to this product. Can you tell me why? It's like, whoa, lady. First of all, how did you even notice that? And it's like,
are you watching me?
I'm sorry. I work in retail. I'm very obsessed with the consumer. This isn't helping. Okay, I'm going to go
Right.
the other way. No, that is really, really good. Well, Robin, thank you so much for taking the time to talk today and share your knowledge about branding and marketing. I think that your analogies, as I said before, were super helpful. I think that the knowledge that you've shared about what, brands can do is really tactical. And I learned some things
Oh.
and believe that it will be helpful to others. So thank you so much. Robin, before we close, do you have any other final thoughts that you'd like to share?
No, my pleasure. This has been so much fun. And I said we work on really giant brands, and I've worked for some of the biggest in the industry. And then we work on these really small, scrappy entrepreneurial brands. They're really fun to work on because there's a sort of level of passion and, well, I'd say an ability, a desire, but also a mandate to take some risks because you can't just follow the category because you're not going to break through that way. And so as a branding professional, that's really fun to work on brands where, you're with the decision maker, they can make things happen. They can try things out. And if it doesn't work, you can pivot. And that's, I guess, the last bit of advice is don't be afraid to try things because, that's going to be how you learn. So you can try, you can learn, you can pivot.
I feel like that's definitely one of the big differentiators for small brands. So thank you for sharing final thoughts. And I think that's super helpful. Awesome. Thank you so much to Robin for coming on the show and talking to us about marketing. I got so many good nuggets from Robin. I love the analogies, especially the hammer and the nail. It just paints such a good visual, and I think it's especially helpful for smaller brands or early stage brands to understand that, hey, if you all are able to really go in really, really sharp on that message, you can nail it. Pun intended. I know that was kind of cheesy, but hey, no, I think there are so many really great nuggets and things to take from today's episode. I hope that it was helpful for you all too. As always, if you enjoyed today's show, please leave us a review. Let me know what you liked about it. And I look forward to hearing from you on the next one. Thanks. Bye.